I didn't know much about this story until I should start. I'm going to preach on the Absalom text, the text from 2 Samuel. I hadn't heard much about this story until I was in college and we had a choral piece called When David Heard. And it's that when we heard this story of Absalom. Absalom, who turned against his father, overthrew him, became the king of Israel. Yet, when he's killed, his dad weeps for him. In the choral piece, it's taken up by the sopranos and the tenors, giving this high-pitched whine, descending whine of Absalom, Absalom. And it goes on for about 90 seconds or so. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Absalom had a reason to not like David, to want to overthrow the king. His half-brother, who was older than him, born first, assaulted Absalom's sister. And when Absalom went to the king to plead for him to do something about it, taking away the innocence of his sister, David did nothing. This was his first and only son. He didn't want to punish him. This is his lineage. So Absalom took fate into his own hands, and some years later took the life of his older brother. He wanted justice. But that wasn't enough. He kept going. He was a beautiful man, and people loved him. It says it over and over again in this story. And so he gathered a following, and they took over Israel. He was now the king, and David had to flee away. David's rightful seat on the throne taken away by the son that he loved, but by a son which needed to be taken care of. It's interesting here that the part of the vengeful king is overtaken. King David does not say obliterate them all. Instead, he pleads for restraint. Leave my son alone. Bring him back to me alive. Now, the soldiers don't listen. It says very clearly that everyone heard it, yet the superiors said, that's poppycock, and ordered him to be killed. And so this person who turned away from David, this person who had done the worst thing ever and dethroned him as king, is not met with anger, is not met with joy over his conquer. Instead, David weeps for a son that betrayed him. At his core, above all else, Absalom was David's son, and he could not overlook it. The common phrase is a parent should never have to bury a child, and it's true. It's sad. The way life works is those that are older are supposed to go before those that are younger. Yet it's a sad thing that happens daily. It's one thing that happens to those who go out to war, who don't get to come back with a medal of honor, but yet come back in a coffin. This story, I think, addresses the true grief felt when we lose loved ones. When we lose those who we went out into battle with, when we lose even those who we've grown apart from. The true grief felt when someone dies in our life. In today's reading, a loving father overrides David's right as a vengeful king. How much does this story relate to God's story with us? If we think about sin, in the corner and center of what it truly is, sin is the very act of trying to dethrone God and put ourselves or our possessions or anything we might have or anything we might look to on that throne instead of God. Behind each and individual sin, when we lie, when we harm others, when we lean on money instead of God. Behind each and individual sin is the larger problem of the constant wavering of faith and trust in God. Sin is the wavering of trust in God. Yet, God does not deal with vengeance upon us. As a vengeful king, God dealt love to us. Jesus' death and resurrection is a promise that God will always deal love with us. If we look at the letter to Ephesians, it says, be an imitator of God. It doesn't say go out and be vengeful. It doesn't say go out and hate others. It says be an imitator of God. And what did God do? He sent his Son to die for us and to give us life. Like David for his son, God weeps for us when we are in pain and cares for our well-being. David's grief was real and palpable as a father's for a son. But despite the grief he felt, David could not restore Absalom. Absalom was not going to come back to life. God, on the other hand, as creator of all, has the power to restore life when the world does everything in its power to take it away. With God, death is not the end. Grief and pain are not the final answer. God restores our lives and we live only and always in God's favor. This story of David's love for his son not only inspires us to think of God's love shown to us through Jesus, but it inspired me differently. There's a musical piece by Jason Robert Brown called Flying Home, and the words are in your bulletin. This is a portrayal of a soldier who lost his life in battle. He's singing this song to his mother, who's very much far away, probably on the other side of an ocean. He's flying home to her in her heart and memories. He's also flying home to his Father, to God, where he will find rest from trials of war, the trials of life, where he will finally find peace. There are many different avenues for which we can hear the Word of God and envision what it means for us. So, I'm going to try a different avenue, one that I know I've kind of done before, but at this time, I'd like to sing for you Flying Home by Jason Robert Brown.